If anyone out there thought that Bryan Kohberger taking a plea deal and being sentenced to spend the rest of his natural life behind bars was going to bring this conversation about this case or the investigation to a halt, well, they could not have been more wrong. In fact, the exact opposite is happening. As you're probably aware, the Moscow Police Department recently dropped a massive batch of police reports. I think they believed that these would be seen as harmless and maybe even as a way to strengthen their case in the public eye. But instead, the exact opposite effect is playing out. And I think these documents are shining an even brighter light on just how flawed and incomplete their investigation really was. The way this YouTube community, especially those out there just seeking the truth in this case, the way they have taken these records, broken them down, and analyzed them has been nothing short of incredible. Honestly, it's been nearly impossible to keep up. At our house, we have 3 kids, 12 and under, and with the chaos of summer schedules, I definitely have not been able to keep up. But school does start back this week, so I'm hoping to finally carve out some time to dig deeper. As I've been trying to catch up, I've been watching some of Pavarotti and Sherlock Holmes' work with the timeline, specifically their deep dive into the 1 hour, 7 minute, and 26 second time gap, or delta. And I have to say it's truly mind-blowing. I'm putting links in the description to some of the videos that I would consider to be must-watch for anyone trying to make sense of really what has often felt like a nonsensical investigation. Sherlock Holmes' video, Conceptualizing Corruption, is right at the top of that list. Just recently, I watched one of Pav's videos about the Doordash driver, Molly McMichael, and the timing of that leaked body-worn camera from her arrest. In it, she talks about what she planned to testify to at trial. Statements that were nothing like what she told investigators early in the case about her delivery to King Road. We only know those early statements now because of the post-sentencing police report dump. But Ann Taylor had them from long before, and they were gold for the defense. Then, right before trial, with almost every motion being denied and no continuance granted, they find out that a key witness has flipped her story. And now it helps the prosecution.
So, now we know that on June 13th, 2025, somebody leaked the Doordash body-worn camera of the Doordash driver to the public. And imagine the thoughts of Ann Taylor and Bryan Kohberger at this point. Because originally they believed she was going to testify to her statements that she had made to law enforcement in the beginning and corroborate their entire case. But instead, now she learns what she's actually going to be testifying to, which they know is a lie based on her original statements. But then again, Ann Taylor has known Bill Thompson for a long time, even before the Meister case where he pulled the same things. So I'm sure she was very aware, due to her previous relationship with Thompson, what he was capable of, and seeing what the Doordash driver said she was going to testify to would have been the last axe hatchet in the tree that made the tree turn over and forced Bryan Kohberger into a plea deal.
So, I am generally familiar with the Meister ruling and how it affects, or at least should have affected, the Bryan Kohberger case if it had gone to trial, particularly when it comes to introducing evidence about third-party perpetrators. But I'll be honest, I'm not as clear on all of the details of how that played out in that case, or exactly which actions of Bill Thompson Pav is pointing to here. If you know what he's referring to, or can point me in the right direction to dig deeper, I'd really appreciate it. Leave those comments below. Now, I'm not going to play Pav's entire video from last week. It's linked in the description if you want to watch the whole thing. But I do want to let him tie this section together before we move on in our discussion.
So let me see if I can wrap this in a bow. When you look at everything that I just showed you, I think the end result is, well, I mean, it just tells itself out. The 4 a.m. start time of the atrocity that all the witnesses involved say it started at 4 a.m. And then you look at the only person that was at the residence undeniably at 4 a.m. that wasn't one of the victims or the roommates. Well, that tells us that, and you look at how the investigators investigated the case, they had to find the Doordash driver through tower dumps, geofence warrants, warrants for her email, then warrants for a trap and trace for her phone before they ever got her in for an interview. She wasn't running in to tell what she knew. That either makes her highly suspect or at the very least makes her very knowledgeable about who is highly suspect. Either way, she would do anything in her power for the MPD not to have to go any further in the case. So, and we know she's friends with Bill Thompson. However, when you look on the backside, why would they kowtow to Molly McMichael and collude? Well, you see now that she was the one person who could literally blow the lid off the fact that the vehicles driving around the King Road neighborhood was none other than Tisdale and Rosendahl doing their narcotics alcohol patrol until old Bob figured out where the discrepancy was in the body cam footage. Now it's known to everybody. People want to deny it. You can't deny the truth, and the truth will prevail. All the darkness will be brought to light. But to wrap it in a bow, so if the defense team, who was getting battered left and right going into this trial, all of a sudden their entire strategy at trial with the Doordash driver, based on her original statement, was to put her on the stand and destroy the state's case and let the state know that was the undercover cop car, because they didn't know the body cam footage had been changed, I guarantee it. And then they look on the internet and somehow it's been magically leaked, and somebody knows to put that footage out of Molly changing her statement and saying, I'm going to testify against Bryan. I saw him there and I parked next to him. What do you think the defense team did? I'm sure they sank to their lowest level. Ann Taylor knew what Bill Thompson was capable of, and I think that was the final blow that sent Bryan Kohberger into that plea agreement. People need to know the truth, and Bryan needs to know the truth that we're out here fighting for the truth, because the timetable is running out on filing that appeal, but we still got plenty of time. We still got a month.
For the prosecution, two of their biggest pillars have always been the DNA, or IgG, and the white Elantra. If Molly McMichael's testimony had stayed consistent with her original statements, the defense could have used it to seriously undermine the claim that it was Bryan Kohberger's Elantra caught circling the neighborhood on security cameras. Pav's point is that her sudden shift would have hit the defense hard, emotionally and strategically. The hope they had in her exculpatory account was pulled out from under them, all while the judge denied nearly every motion they'd filed, including for a continuance. That left them with no time to investigate why her story changed, while still preparing for a capital trial just weeks away. I still wonder why they didn't just push forward to trial, keep all their appeal options open, and take their chances. But I know there's so much we still don't know, so I can't say what I would have done in their shoes. That train of thought took me back to August 2023, during a hearing on the DNA and IgG evidence. The defense brought in 3 experts, including Gabriela Vargas, who testified about the terms of service for the genealogy websites and the opt-in, opt-out rules for law enforcement access. When asked what happens if someone opts out, Vargas explained, I should not be able to see that you are a match to my unknown DNA contributor. But she went on to say that there have been cases where law enforcement, including the FBI, ignored their own rules and the site's terms of service to view people's profiles despite having explicitly opted out. The prosecution didn't cross-examine any of the defense's witnesses. But later that night, the FBI showed up at Vargas's home and interrogated her about her testimony that day in court. Though I think intimidated might be a better word to use there, especially since they were interrogating her about her testimony where she had made statements that exposed them and other law enforcement for overstepping the bounds, and her testimony directly helped the defense. At the very next hearing, Ann Taylor brought the incident to Judge's attention.
The other motion, Your Honor, has to do with what happens to witnesses that the defense might call. The court will recall we had Gabriela Vargas testify last Friday in our hearing. Last night, she was visited by 2 FBI agents and interrogated about her testimony and the timing of her declaration. That, in our view, impacts Mr. Kohberger's due process rights and his rights to effective assistance of counsel, and that motion will also be filed later today in the first instance.
I think most of us can agree. If a couple of FBI agents showed up at our front door to question us, it would be more than a little unnerving. It would be downright intimidating.
FBI, open up!
FBI, we're not leaving until you come out.
I vividly remember watching this hearing. It was the same one where Bryan Kohberger waived his right to a speedy trial. When Ann Taylor described what had happened to a defense witness after she testified, I was shocked. And honestly, I expected the judge to be shocked too. I thought for sure we'd see Bill Thompson backpedaling or trying to distance himself from whatever went down. But that's not what happened. Judge didn't even flinch, and there was no backpedaling from the prosecution table. Instead, Bill Thompson openly took responsibility, telling the court he was the one who sent the agents to that witness's home.
I will, for the record, since Ms. Taylor has brought up the situation with Vargas, give court and counsel background. Over the weekend, Ms. Vargas, after she testified, engaged in some electronic communications with others in the genetic genealogy field. Those indicated, as it was reported to the investigators, to our investigators, that she was redigging on some of the things that she testified to in court. When we heard of that, I reached out to the investigators and said, can we find out what's going on? And the FBI indeed undertook an investigation. And preliminary reports are that Ms. Vargas claims that some of what was in her declaration, she inadvertently agreed to or signed without fully reading it. We're documenting that so we can expose it to Ms. Taylor and to the court, because I think those directly to what happened last week. That's the only reason that she was contacted, to report to us that she was retracting some of what she had testified to and what was in her declaration. And we felt in fairness we needed to uncover that quickly. There was no other motive, no other motivation to it. I just wanted to candid report.
The audio from this hearing is terrible, but here's the gist. Bill Thompson gave the court one of the most vague, non-specific explanations that you can imagine. He said he'd been hearing rumors that once she got off the stand, Miss Vargas immediately started having electronic communications with others in her field, and she was basically letting it be known that she was reneging on parts of her testimony. According to Thompson, this was because she'd signed her declaration, under penalty of perjury, without even reading it first. Supposedly, after leaving the stand, she had a light bulb moment. Maybe I should actually check what I just testified to and signed my name to, under penalty of perjury. And wouldn't you know it, she realized it wasn't what she'd meant to sign. Fortunately, and I say that sarcastically, a couple of FBI agents were happy to show up at her house to help her come to that realization. Of course, Thompson wrapped it all up with a halo polishing line. There was no other motive, no other motivation to this. I just wanted to be candid with the court. And Taylor's response? In the most polite way possible, she basically said, I'm not calling Mr. Thompson a liar, Your Honor, but he's lying.
Your Honor, that's certainly different than the information that I received. I would have been happy to be advised about that, but I'm not sure that's accurate. I'm sure that's what Mr. Thompson heard. I'm not saying they're calling him a liar, but the quality of the information he's received, I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. My hope is that these FBI agents that were at Ms. Vargas' home last night, hopefully they reported everything that they talked to her about, and that should resolve the issue of that.
Bill Thompson's handling of Miss Vargas is not an isolated moment. It seems to fit a pattern. When a witness's testimony could hurt his case and help the defense, the most notable developments seem to happen outside the courtroom. Take Molly McMichael. I still have a lot of questions about how and why her account changed so dramatically from her original statements she made to investigators. Those early statements could have been devastating to the prosecution's narrative. Yet now, her testimony seemed to have shifted into something far more favorable to the state. And in regards to his handling of Miss Vargas in that situation, I would hope at this point we could all agree that by sending FBI agents to her home to interrogate her regarding her testimony is nothing short of witness intimidation at this point.
Well, it's not something I typically hear about FBI agents going in and visiting a witness after that they have delivered testimony. However, I think a lot of that lies with perception, right? How Mrs. Vargas felt during that discussion. And I would hope that copious amounts of notes were being taken. And I would hope that the FBI has a very good reason. But the interesting thing that I see here is the FBI is not the dominant investigatory team in the Kohberger case. So I'm surprised that they were the ones that followed up with this, but it could be simply because she's in a different location and it's easier. Look, she is well respected in her field. Certainly she's testified at trials before, but if you have two agents showing up at your front door, I think anyone is going to have a defensive reaction to that, right? Because they're not there for good news typically. And so I do think it would have been much better had had Ann Taylor had someone from the defense team accompanying her to a local FBI office for this interview to take place, because I think that just would have been much more comfortable all around versus someone basically surprising you in your home. And there's a reason that we do that, right? Is to catch people off of their guard. And so I think that might be some of the issue at play here. And I hate to go back to perception because it's so nebulous, but I think that's part of the problem.
Prosecutors are a vital part of our justice system. Their role is not to win at all costs, but to seek truth and justice. But when integrity takes a backseat to securing a conviction, or even more corrupt motivation, the ripple effects are profound. It erodes the public's trust. It undermines the fairness of our courts. And in the end, it doesn't just fail the defendant, it fails us all. And for Bill Thompson, failing to do his job with integrity, to seek truth and justice, seems to be a pattern.
FBI, open up!
FBI, we're not leaving till you come out. FBI, have you heard the good news?
FBI, can we come in and share a quick message?
FBI, UPS delivery.
FBI, honey, come out! It's me, your mom!
FBI, we're your neighbor.
FBI? Are you mad at us? FBI, oh, hello. I hope this isn't a bad time.
FBI, have you seen this man before?
Nope.
FBI, okay?
FBI, thank you so much for your time. FBI, open up!